Hello and welcome to the Intro to Hockey Analytics module. My name is Nick Lacoste. I am a former Brock University sport management student, and I'm happy to be here today to teach you about hockey analytics. Now, the goals of this hockey analytics module are the following: to understand the growth of statistical usage and reliance in hockey, to distinguish analytics, statistics, and tactics in hockey, to learn how to use and study hockey analytics tools, as well as to evaluate hockey analytics questions in a creative and modern manner. Now, the table of contents for this section of the module is the growth of analytics usage in hockey, the growth of analytics reliance in hockey, and the benefits of data-driven hockey, as well as the drawbacks of over-reliance on analytics. Let's talk about the growth of analytics usage in hockey. Now, over the years, analytics has become prominent within modern organizations as well as modern hockey processes. More and more teams at the pro and junior levels are using analytics to inform their decision making. We can see this as you look at the 2019 list provided by Shayna Goldman of The Athletic. On Twitter, she's been collecting lists of people that are said to work in all these organizations in what you can call analytics roles, whether that be a general manager with analytics background or positions that are specifically devoted to analytics work. As you can see here, this is from 2019, and as I move forward to 2022, you can see the list has grown tremendously in just 3 years, as well as 2023 this past year. In just 4 years, the list of analytics personnel has more than doubled across the National Hockey League to what we know. There are obviously some roles that may not be mentioned because this is all from publicly available data and availability on Twitter based on hiring and news articles that we can find. But the analytics community has grown both publicly on Twitter as well as through pro and developed organizations. Moving on to the growth of analytics reliance in hockey. This is further to the growth of the usage. While more and more people are getting hired, more and more people are using analytics to inform their decision making, and this is feeding into our broadcasts, to our media, and more. As you can see by this graphic here, the slot shots per game. This is something that you would never see 10 to 15 years ago in a hockey broadcast, but with the partnerships with companies like SportLogic, these are available for fans and viewers to see and understand during broadcasts to become more informed fans, more educated fans. You would never have seen these graphics previously. It might be throughout Twitter and online spheres in sort of niche communities, but nowadays it's become commonplace for analytics and stat and data-driven information to be available to the public. Even third-party companies will use hockey analytics in this sense, such as SportLogic, and be hired out to provide these kind of stats to broadcasts. That's how important they have become in recent years. Now moving on to the benefits of data-driven hockey. I've broken these down into 3 main categories: data-driven decision-making, proactivity, and a sense of certainty. So let's dive into each of these. The first idea that relates to the use of data-driven information is data-driven decision-making. Now, on the screen here, you can see 2 websites. These are publicly available websites that you can look at for free. The left is moneypuck.com, and the right is Natural Stat Trick. I'll be posting tutorials for both of these websites and how to best use them as a fan later in this analytics series. But as you can see, I have made the moneypuck.com left picture there about defensive pairs in the National Hockey League, and the right you can see Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, and Carter Verhaeghe as sort of a line tool about all their advanced stats when they're played together. Now, data-driven decision-making I find to be the most primary usage of analytics in the pro and junior worlds. Specifically, you're looking at teams and coaches using data like line tools or data on specific players to inform what they do. If I'm going to build a lineup, do I want to build the lineup using players that play the best together based on the stats? Or do I want to do it based on gut feelings, based on chemistry that I can see, based on friendships, based on whatever? Data-driven decision-making has become more and more prominent in the modern world, and this is part of it. Building lineups, building rosters, even that, if in a management perspective. Furthermore, you might see players watching replays on the bench. They might be looking at their information. They might be replaying past shifts. Players nowadays know more and more about their analytics than ever before. Some players may choose not to understand or not choose to learn what analytics are, and that's totally fine. They can go about their way as well as they can. But data-driven and data-informed players seem to be the ones that are taking the next step in their game, whether they know that certain shots are working in certain areas or certain lanes up the ice are becoming open against certain teams or exploiting certain goaltenders for that matter. There are a lot of data-driven decisions that are made within high-level NHL organizations as well as in junior leagues that will help teams have a competitive advantage in their everyday hockey games. The second main benefit of data-driven hockey is proactivity. I like to categorize proactivity as preparing for the future while being ready for the present. Proactivity consists of using data to inform us on what could be expected out of players based on how they're doing currently and what they may be able to do. Lucas Raymond plays for the Detroit Red Wings, and as on the left here you can see his sort of player card, if you will. This shows his individual on-ice and usage metrics on the right-hand side of it, where you see he's on pace for 27 goals and 42 assists this season. And this is based from advanced stats websites that will calculate the paces that you compare to everybody else in the National Hockey League. As you can see by the star number on the left, the 98 that's in yellow, that means that he's in the 98th percentile of assists, meaning that there are only 2% more in the NHL that have more assists than him, which is quite outstanding. However, we see that in the projected GSVA timeline on the left there, that is game score value added. It's one of those metrics that you can use to add wins or value over time and compare year by year and predict into the future. This GSVA timeline shows a bit of a plateau going into 2025, 2026, and 2027. This implies that Lucas Raymond may have a high floor because 3.5 wins is really good for a National Hockey League player. Consider 0 to be basically replacement level, like a fourth liner that would be scratched. So 3.5 is tremendous. We could assume someone like Connor McDavid would be extremely high, like near the 6 maybe even perhaps. But Lucas Raymond is in a high percentile in the league because of his stuff on the right. You can see there, those current statistics are looking really good. He's in very high percentiles out of all National Hockey League players. However, it looks like going into his next contract, which will be up soon, he'll need to prove himself even further because of this expected plateau. We could call this a high floor but also a low ceiling type of player. So analytics can help us, whether it be managers, front office, or ownership in general, to understand what players could be before we dole out contracts. Did Leon Draisaitl, for example, would anyone have expected him to overcome $8.5 million per year as a forward and get 100-point seasons back to back to back? Maybe not, maybe so. But with the sense of proactivity, maybe they were sure in the Oilers organization that he would do well, so they signed him at a certain point in his contract to a long-term versus a short-term. All these decisions can be influenced by data, but they don't have to be. So as a manager, coach, or an owner, when you're doling out money to hockey players and you're spending millions of dollars on your front office, it's important to understand the value of data, where it can be used to benefit you and gain an advantage that you otherwise would not have. The third benefit of data-driven hockey is a sense of certainty. And it's not entirely the idea of certainty where you would know the future and you understand how players are going to pan out per se, but a sense of certainty meaning you have, using data, you have the idea of how a player could pan out. And this is a really important tool for managers, for front offices, for ownerships, even for agents. If you're going to vouch for your own player, if you're able to prove that based on their comparables to other players, they're going to pan out a really good way, you can get them a lot more money than you wouldn't have before if you didn't use data. So a way to use this would be to use a software such as Hockey Prospecting, which is a payable service made by Byron Bader. This is a prominent guy on Twitter who you might know. He is very involved with NHL front offices in the past where he's run some of their drafts, and part of that is using this hockey prospecting model. Basically, it takes the NHL point value and it takes a percentage of that and says how many OHL points would be one NHL point. For example, if, as you can see there in the second year of Andrew Mangiapane on the left, you see he's got 18 in that OHL D0, which is your draft year. D1 is the year after your draft, otherwise known as draft plus 1, draft plus 2, draft plus 3, you can see there, and the D minus 1 is the one before your draft year. So as you can see, Andrew Mangiapane put 18 and then 38 and 43. This means that in the prime of Andrew Mangiapane's NHL career, he's expected to put up that many points compared to that exact season in the NHL. It takes OHL points. For example, if he puts up 100 OHL points, that might put him at 43, but it all depends on things like age. It depends on a lot of other factors that go into this model to make it as accurate as it can be in a prediction type of scenario. As you can see on the right, I've chosen Jiri Kulich as a decent comparable. As you can see with the trend that they're both going, they're almost identical in their same age years. Their D-1, their D0, and their D+1 and their D+2 are almost identical in points. However, you can see Jiri Kulich is already in the AHL. Now, the AHL and the OHL being different leagues but the same points still kind of means the same thing, where they're both on pace to have in their prime in the NHL a 45-ish point total, regardless of what league they're playing in that year. But it is interesting to look at compared to what other prospects are in the model. If you have a young up-and-coming prospect in your organization and you're not sure how to value him, you can look at something like this and say, wow, okay, compared to other players in their age times, when they were 18, when they were 17, they did this well, and he's doing the same as they were, or even better. That means he's going to be better than them, possibly. It's not exactly certain, but it's a sense of certainty. Analytics are not inherently wrong. No one can predict the exact future. Like all sports, hockey will always be a game, where legally every game of hockey is random, and there's an opportunity for both teams to win the game. Scandals and everything aside. Former New Jersey Devils head of analytics Sonny Mehta said a quote that really struck out to me. It says, never underestimate the randomness of hockey. It's not impossible that we exceed expectations. It's not impossible that players play better than what the stats are expecting them to do. It's also not impossible that they play worse, for that matter. The game of hockey is a game. It's a sport. We love to watch it because we're not sure what's going to happen. So that's a really key point here, is that analytics can inform us on what may happen and what could happen based on informed data, but it's not going to predict the future exactly. Now, compared to other sports like baseball, as you can see in the background there, we've got Jose Barrios giving the ball to manager John Schneider. This was a pivotal moment in the playoffs last season for the Blue Jays, where Barrios was pulled early in the game based on analytical decisions that were made before the game had even happened, and assumptions were made that this would be better for the Blue Jays to pull him now and put somebody else in to finish the job and do better analytically. Of course, this did not happen, and the Blue Jays ended up losing the series, which is unfortunately sort of plagued the analytics community, being that everyone sort of is hating on analytics and saying that stats are not the way to go. You got to understand the game moment and balance that with the present moments. So I like to say that hockey is more random than baseball because of team play. 1v1 in baseball is super important. It's a pitcher versus a batter. Hockey, in the sense, is very fluid. I call it the fluidity of hockey is the reason why it's so special, is because it's 5v5. Everyone has different variables, and everyone's part of the situation at the same time. You also can't score 4 goals in the same play as you could with a grand slam. So hockey becomes, harder to predict where you can't really understand how fast things are going to go, how slow things are going to go. It could be 0-0, it could be 7-6. Whereas baseball can be opened up tremendously in one play via the one-on-one scenario. It wasn't the analytics' fault per se that Jose Barrios' situation didn't work out. It's the people who were using analytics who made the decisions that resulted in the negative consequences for the Blue Jays. So this can happen in any sport. This is not just something that has never happened before. Somebody has run every data thing that they can possibly think of and understood the situation to the best of their ability and said, I want to do this because of this A, B, and C. This could be analytics driven. This could be personnel driven. They could have won this game, and then everyone would be applauding analytics in the sense. So this one game sort of defined the idea of, strongly abiding by the analytics gospel, which is not really what I'm hoping to convey today. I'm hoping to share that analytics can be used and should be used, for that matter, because of its ability to help us understand the game further than we could at face value. However, sometimes things can happen. You can't predict the exact future. Balancing past and present methods of evaluating athletes involves being ready for randomness. You have to sort of hope for the best and prepare for the worst in that sense. Prepare for injuries, prepare for what you call in hockey puck luck, prepare for any other variables that may influence the game. That's what makes it fun to watch as fans, because it's so random. You can't predict every single game. That's why betting is not 100% perfect in the modern schemes. To conclude, simply put, scouting information is context, analytics is context, personal opinions are biases. This means that scouting and analytics are both useful in the modern sports world. Analytics have become increasingly more popular, but both scouting and analytics are super important in your decision making, and they can both influence decision making to radical or marginal degrees. So be aware of that, and be aware of the personal opinions that can be biases when you're evaluating players and teams in sports. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.